All right, so yeah, it looks like Siufung, who's our newest board member and our first ITBP ambassador, they're having some technical issues on their end, so they're not able to join us just yet, but they are trying. They'll shoot me a text whenever they're ready to hop on. They're usually the person who likes to host these things, so I'm a little bit out of my element on this, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started, just because people have been kind of messaging and waiting to hear this conversation. So my name's Nat. I'm the assistant executive director of the IATBP, and I also run all the social media and all that stuff. And I don't really like to talk about myself, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. And I use they, them pronouns. So the person that we have on with us right now, I want to make sure I get your name right. It's Isla, right?
Isla. Like Isla.
Isla. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we've been debating how to pronounce it correctly for like 3 days now.
Okay, it's the common. That's the very common mispronunciation. Ilsa is like a third, and then like Ilya, people come out of nowhere with that one. That's kind of like a distant fourth.
Okay, yeah, that was not on my radar, so at least I didn't go like quite that far. No, I just like phonetically in my head, I was like, Isla, like that sounds right. But you said Ela,
Isla.
how did you say it?
Isla.
Isla. Okay, Isla. It's in my head now. We're good. Isla. Awesome. So Isla Gordon. You are our last year's powerlifting meet overall winner and also the winner of our only femme category that we had in our powerlifting meets. And according to your bio, you're also an artist and you're based out of, I'm not sure how to pronounce the region that you mentioned.
Yeah, Eastern Pennsylvania. It's the Lehigh Valley. Is what it's called.
Lehigh?
Yeah. So Bethlehem, Allentown, Easton. If anyone's familiar with any of those towns, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah. And so an artist and a personal trainer, which I think is very, very two interesting spaces to cohabitate. And in your bio, you mentioned that you started transitioning in your late 20s. And then, of course, you came to our powerlifting meet last year and you were the overall winner and you won the Femme division. And we're just really excited to hear from you about your experiences at the meet and with powerlifting in general and being an artist and a lifter, and just like hearing your perspectives on the issues that trans athletes are facing right now in this particular political climate. I just got a notification that Siufung is here. Join us, Siufung. I just added you to the chat. There we go. Hi.
Hi there. I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know why my internet just get problems. You always get problems at the very end.
That's okay. We just got started, so I just introduced myself and Isla. I figured out how to pronounce her name is Isla.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to introduce yourself real quick, Siufung, before we get started?
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Isla. I'm Siufung. So I'm a non-binary professional bodybuilder. So I'm in a professional league. I'm also an ambassador of the IATBP this year, trying to help out with like organizing fireside chats like this one, and hopefully encouraging more people to join our like bodybuilding and powerlifting competition at the end of the year. Is it better if I have my headphone on?
I can hear you just fine. So.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, so it's all good. But yeah, we're super excited to talk to you because Siufung and I are both bodybuilders and we're not super familiar with powerlifting as much as we would like to be. And I was at last year's meet, but Siufung was one of the bodybuilding judges and was busy at the bodybuilding show helping set all that up. So it's gonna be interesting to hear about your experiences as two people who are not super familiar with the sport. So so to kind of kick us off, it's basically the same question we like to start all of our chats with to kind of get to know the other person. Is basically how did you get into lifting and specifically your sport of powerlifting? And like, how did that coincide with your fitness journey, your journey as a trans person and transitioning? And how did those inform each other? It's kind of a big question, but it's kind of just like your story with being trans and getting into
Yeah,
lifting.
yeah, for sure. I think that it's probably like there's kind of like two parts to that, right? There's like, how did I come to lifting, but then how did I come to powerlifting like later in life? And so I started off like I was pretty active as a kid, like rode bikes, like played soccer and baseball and swam in middle school and like all these like sports. And it never was a good fit because I didn't feel like I fit in on like gendered sports teams, you know? But I started going to the local YMCA with my buddies after school when we were like 15 and 16. And, you know, we were just giving each other bicep tendonitis with like forced negatives, you know, just reading like Arnold's bodybuilding encyclopedia and only looking at the bicep curl pictures, you know what I'm saying? Which is like a very common experience for, you know, at least assigned male at birth people to just, you know, bro out in the gym. But there was always like this wall that I hit, like I could like look at, like, I just never resonated with all the goals that my friends have. I didn't like how I would look in the mirror and still hate everything I saw, you know? Because kind of like concurrently, I was dealing with like just an awful eating disorder, which I dealt with for like 15 years, you know? So somehow I just survived, just kept being active because I liked being active. Like I could identify that I liked the physical exertion. I liked lifting. I just couldn't articulate a goal because I couldn't articulate the disconnect I felt with my body, you know? And I remember like, you know, and then I went to college and I was on like a co-ed field hockey team, which was like a little bit better, but also like, you know, equally alienating for like different reasons, you know? And I was a collegiate rower. So like I was like around the gym for a long time. I just never could kind of like place myself within it, you know? It was just this weird, like I used to describe my experience of like wrestling with my gender identity is like I wish I was just like assimilated by the Borg so I didn't have to like worry about my gender, or like I could just turn into an animal like on some like weird experiment, you know? And then there was like I would see like photos of like Ronnie Coleman on like the Mr. Olympia website and I was just like, that's not even human. Like part of me kind of wants that, but like I don't know, it was just like a crazy weird story. Like just like everything, I just felt like an alien, you know, in like a weird flesh suit, right? And so then I kind of fell out of just physical activity after college and got like infinitely more depressed, very disconnected from my body. My eating disorder was still just like ravaging my life. And so then takes me basically up to like 2019. I had managed to get myself on antipsychotics, which to treat my gender dysphoria, which I didn't realize I was gender dysphoria until like, you know, last year, you know, and it could, but like, so, man, I feel like I'm just like rambling all over the place, but so I went to grad school for art, you know, and there's this period of self-discovery that was like outside of my physical body, right? So it allowed me to kind of like start to examine things. My work dealt with family album photographs. So it allowed me to kind of return to my childhood in this very sort of analytical way. But then I moved to Arkansas when my partner was in grad school, couldn't get medical care, didn't have my meds, and then I had to deal with like all of the feelings that I was feeling. And so with that kind of like that analytical framework of art, I was able to kind of dive into just like looking more closely at my life and my experience of the world. And that led me to the realization that, you know, first I was like, I'm definitely not male. I'm comfortable saying that, like I'm non-binary, right? And then I eventually arrived at being trans. And so at that first realization of being non-binary, I was like, okay, well, I got to do something about this body because I just have been neglecting it and drinking heavily. And so I just started going to the gym and started working with a personal trainer. And he was just giving me workouts from like Chris Hemsworth's app. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm on my own then. And I was like, I'm a smart person. I can like learn stuff. And so then I started just, you know, looking through, you know, everything that's out there, you know, like T Nation, like all like the awful, I mean, like, it's not awful, but like there's a lot of fitness information out there, and a lot of it is of very varying levels
Yeah.
of utility, right? And
Some of
so
it's helpful, but you have to wade through a lot of shit to get to the actually helpful stuff.
exactly. And so then I came across 531, which is like this training methodology created by Jim Wendler, who's a bit of a misogynist, so like don't go looking to you know, keep it at arm's length, but it works, right? And so I started lifting with like the power lifts, right? Squat, bench, deadlift, an overhead press, and just that was the bulk of my training, basically on my own, starting with like linear progression and then to 531, and I kind of just continued that and just kept stringing together like workouts until I moved back up out of Arkansas and found a super cool gym, and that kind of like catalyzed this whole thing, right? So the gym owner of the gym I went to, it's called Ironstone Barbell in Hellertown, PA. She was like the first person, aside from my partner, that I told I was trans, and I wasn't even like presenting. I was just like, listen, like I need help in the gym. Like I know a little bit, but I don't know a lot. And she's like, yeah, I got you. Like you can use the rest, like whatever restroom you want, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I wasn't even like out, right? Like I wasn't doing anything to present like super femme. And so she was like, yeah, you could just, you know, this is a safe space. And so it was like the most amazing experience ever, right? And so already I'm starting to associate these positive experiences with powerlifting, and I just kind of like dove in. It became like this really nice kind of space where and yeah, it was just terrific. And that very quickly led to wanting to compete. And before I knew it, I came across it's alphabet soup, IATBP. And
Yeah.
no, I'm in.
I spend a lot of time remembering
the
acronym.
Yeah, it takes some learning.
Yeah. And so yeah, it just became it was just such an important part of my life for so long to just kind of like, yeah, it's been everything, because I think that for me, it's like, instead of focusing on what I was not, it let me focus on what I was, like what my body could do, rather than what my body couldn't do or wasn't doing, right? Like it was this way of kind of like reclaiming agency in a really kind of like powerful way. And powerlifting also let me kind of like tackle my eating disorder too, right? And I think that people have this perception that, you know, fitness, bodybuilding, powerlifting, like they are things that are going to be detrimental to your health, right? But I don't think it necessarily has to be, right? I think there was this, because if I wanted to squat 400 pounds, then I need to do the things that a person that squats 400 pounds does, and that's feed themselves, right? And so like it just kind of like kept me on track in a way that like past sort of like these like amorphous, like I'm gonna go to the gym and work towards what, right? So if I could just target strength, it allowed me to kind of like get everything in line behind that goal, and really has made a huge difference in kind of like taking control of my transition and really tackling a lot of things I was dealing with for so long.
Yeah, thank you so much for your sharing. You know, Ronnie Coleman was also kind of my first inspiration. Why, you know, the lightweight baby thing, you know, it's all over like the gym, right? And so, yeah, thank you for sharing, you know, your story. And I think what makes it so interesting, so interested to know more about is, you know, that actually like, you know, powerlifting, bodybuilding, or sometimes with CrossFitting as well, or different types of like weightlifting, right? People move around these different sports, right? And so what makes you stay in powerlifting? What is this thing that attracts you in powerlifting? Because for me, when I do bodybuilding, I'm very attracted to really training about the shape of the muscles, right? So it's a very visual thing, right? Kind of aligns with like what I want to be seen, right, by other people. So I'm really curious to know. I mean, you know, I've tried powerlifting, more powerlifting moves recently, as you can see, and it's so difficult. It's just a whole different type of training method, right? And so I'm really curious on, you know, why powerlifting? Why not other sports? Or did you ever try other similar type of strength sports, but ultimately, you know, come back to powerlifting?
Yeah, I I think so. Like the gym that I go to also like has a lot of like strongman implements and a really talented national level strongman competitor that teaches like classes there. And so like I have that stuff at hand, and it is kind of like a fun novelty, but there's so much about like skill acquisition and like practicing the implements that didn't necessarily appeal to me. And like with bodybuilding, I think that bodybuilding is more about like the lifestyle, right? Like each discrete bodybuilding workout is less impactful than a powerlifting workout, you know? So I think that there's something in that session that like that heavy squat day on Monday morning, there's something about that where like even like a killer bodybuilding workout just doesn't scratch that same itch, you know, because it's not about that one workout. It's also about the cream of rice you had 1 hour before that workout, and then you made sure you took your pre-workout for the pump 30 minutes before, and then you have your intra, and then you hit all your muscle groups. You got that like sick pump. You went home. You did it in reverse. You had your your pieces, your fruit, your all your carbs in your post-workout meal, you know, and then you had to make sure your sleep was right. Like there's this like bigger picture where I think that like in powerlifting, a lot of the emphasis is placed on those sessions. And I think that there's something I like about that. That's sort of like, okay, it's go time, right? That, and there's like a little bit of fear too. Like, I think that like when you start to get up to these like when these bigger weights, you know, I think that in my mind, like 400 pounds was the one where I was like, oh, this feels a little bit different, right? When you start to get these bigger weights, like there is this element of fear, this element of like mindset that has to be there. And not that like bodybuilding, definitely you need a mindset, but it's a different mindset. And so there's kind of this, I've heard like some powerlifters will talk about it as like their dark place, or the void. Like there's this spot you have to go where you kind of just kind of like check out, and you are nothing. You reduce yourself to a machine. You reduce yourself to something that can only do one thing, and that is squat that weight, right? Yeah. And so there's this, and I think that happens too, like in different ways when you're at the end of like a killer, like, you know, mile rep set, like in bodybuilding, like, yeah, you're burning and you're not thrilled with your life right now, but like it's still there's like a little bit of it's different but the same. And I think there's just it's in like the kind of like the small differences that powerlifting appeals to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like it reminds me when my powerlifting friend is trying to like teach me, you know, how to lift heavy. Because I'm very good at muscle-mind connections, right? That's what bodybuilders does, right? And you get a good pump, and that's a good training. But when you do powerlifting moves, and now I understand why powerlifters have to like rest 10 minutes in between sets. I was like, there's no way that bodybuilders are gonna, you know, rest for 10 minutes and just do one set and that's it, right? But then that kind of, I think it's a different type of challenge, right? Mental challenge. I think for powerlifting, it's really much about, you know, really overcoming that mental stress, right? To lift that one heavy weight. And so I think that is, you know, something that I have been actively working on too, because as a bodybuilder, I think the mental training comes in the dieting, you know, things that is basically outside the gym, right? The temptation of food, you know, whether you sleep enough, stuff like that. So I think definitely those are different types of mental challenges, which are equally equally challenging and equally soaring your muscles, but in a very different way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I feel like preparing for a bodybuilding workout, I feel like it's more of this feeling of like, okay, I've got a marathon I'm about to hit, you know, like I have to do like 40 sets of bicep curls today, and it's gonna be a long road today. But with powerlifting, it's like, okay, I have 3 sets of squats that I have to do today for like 5 reps each. But then there's like the build up, like you've known all week, like you're gonna hit those squats, you know the number that you have to hit. There's like 6 warm-up sets leading up to it, and then the weights on the bar, and you're like, all right, this is what I've been waiting a week for these 3 sets, you know? It's different than like, oh man, I gotta pump through like 40 fucking, you know, sets of bicep curls or whatever today. It's a different like mental game, like you said.
Yeah, and to switch the topic a little bit, I heard that you just talk about like you were in graduate school and doing, are you doing art? Like, is it in a graduate art school? Like, I'm also a graduate student.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
like,
So
so I would love to hear more about, I would love to hear more about, your experience in grad school, like, in art school. And you also mentioned that you are artist, right? Of some form. So I would love to know more about like, what type of art are you doing? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, Siufung's also an artist, so they were very curious about that.
Yeah, so I am I work mainly in photography, and it's kind of like branched out into like installation art and stuff. So I went to graduate school at RIT in upstate New York and got a master's of fine art in photographic arts and sciences, or photography and related media is the official name of the program. And so it was an interesting experience. It was a lot. Like it's a lot to kind of like put, because like with like art is like so tied to your like identity and self-expression, and so it can be like really pretty a traumatic experience when you like step into like this like patriarchal very like conservative rigid environment, but I think that I learned a whole heck of a lot about myself, and learned like I love art, right? So like my art is well, I mean, like the stuff here, I have some stuff on my wall. We can just go here. So like this is one of my pieces from a series called Delta, which is like about, I used as a framework these summer vacations to my family's cabin in Canada. And so it's about kind of like queer adolescence and belonging and memory, and kind of like how things are remembered and misremembered by photography, and how our perception of the past is shaped by our experience. And the fire emoji in the window is my partner Ash, who is like also like a collaborator. So we make art. So we have a documentary project about our life, which is on our websites, and we also have a collaboration called The Mind of Milk and Honey, or Milk and Honey, which we do like weird installation, performance art, video pieces. So we've had that on display, pieces from that kind of like concept at Miami Art Week the last 2 years. We've had the opportunity to perform at like some great like museums, and so it's all over the place. You can get to it through my Instagram profile. You click to Isla Gordon, go to my website, and there's links to my partner as well as our collaboration. But yeah, it's really about kind of like queer domesticity, queer adolescence, memory, be the main big themes in the body. Yeah.
Wow, that's just so cool. Like, I mostly do poetry, but I also do a little bit of video stuff. Well, I'm not good at video making, but I did had a short like documentary about myself like 10 years ago maybe, and people are still watching it somehow. But yeah, and so but mostly I do poetry. But I think that's a very interesting correlation with like our bodies, especially our bodies, you know, in relation to sports and, you know, artistic expressions, right? Because I do think a lot about, like, since I do bodybuilding, I obviously write less written poetry. And at times, you know, when people ask me, why do you write much less poetry now, right? Most likely it's because, like, you know, you have other stuff very busy working on, right? But at the same time, I also feel like, you know, the way that I express my feelings, you know, I expressing myself through poetry was kind of like transformed to, you know, transform in the way that I treat my sport, right? Almost like an art, right? So, you know, sculpting my body in various ways, right? So that it look in a certain way that, you know, that speaks my poetry in a sense, right? So I wonder, like, does powerlifting does a similar effect to you in terms of like how you navigate yourself with your identity, with your powerlifting sports, and with, you know, your love and passion in art?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, I think it's this idea, like, for me, like, I always felt called to make art because I wanted somebody else to see it and feel less alone. You know, I wanted like young me to like see it and be like, oh my God, it's okay. Like, like, oh, I had that same experience, you know? And I've been like really fortunate to have had people come up to me and be like, you know, I had such a hard time growing up as a man. And like, I just like, they're, you know, they still present like, they're still, you know, a cis man, but like they said, like that really resonated me. Like I felt so pressured to like do these things or present a certain way. And like, so I think these like, so like in that regard, like I'm really blessed to know that like it's working, you know, but I think that also like being sort of like powerlifting and just like being out in the world as a trans woman is also like a form of like self-expression. And it also like so that, and I kind of return to this idea of like visibility as resistance, like putting my art there was like it's self-expression, but it's also like resistance. It's also like saying like not all experiences are straight experiences, not all experiences are like comfortable experiences, right? And so then like just being sort of like visible, like doing like being a power lifter, and like, you know, because like I've had like people are like, oh, you know, you're gonna get like too muscular, like yeah, okay, I'm not gonna fit in a size 14 guy. Like, yeah, my shoulders like hulk out of everything. But it's also like, what's wrong with that, right? And so then it's like it becomes this like act of like defiance and like self-expression. There is this element of like being a sort of a provocateur, like in what I do, because it's like so many people feel like they can't do that or they don't want to do that. It's like, well, they haven't even tried. Like, and you're going to tell yourself that you can't do that, you don't want to do that. And in the same way that people, you know, might see my art and say like, oh, like, you know, I didn't think anyone else thought like that. I didn't know anyone else had that experience of that particular thing. And it's like, well, they did, you know, like you're not alone, you know. And I think that's like, yeah. So I think in my mind, like it's less about like I don't know that like, you know, squatting 410 pounds last October was like, you know, a work of staggering genius, but like it mattered to me, and certainly there was like really great things that came from it, right?
Yeah, I really like that you said like visibility is a form of resistance, right? So that also reminds me so much of my politics of going to, let's say, mainstream competitions, right, to compete, right? Even though, you know, you kind of expect that there were a lot of people, you know, there's just a lot of hatred around, right? You know, around how you express yourself, right, and what kind of categories you compete in, right? And so but then I really see it as a kind of resistance, right? Your presence there, whether you compete in whatever category, is already giving, you know, us people a stance, right? Of like, you know, standing the ground of being who we are, right? And so, I feel like IATBP, to a large extent, provide that kind of space where we not only express ourselves, right? But it's also a platform that, that showcase to people that, we exist and we deserve to be there, right? To be an athlete, to be a sportsman, right? So, you have competed last year and you were our overall best lifter last year in the powerlifting meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what were your experience, at IATBP last year? Yeah, just share with us more about, your experience in competing last year.
Yeah,
What was it, your first meet
it was.
also?
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
yeah.
Okay.
I had at that point I had been like barbell back squatting and deadlifting and bench pressing for 4 years, and then on TRT for a year and 9 months at the time I competed. And my first competition, there was a meet director locally that was hosting meets that I could have attended in the USPA. But I didn't feel comfortable, just kind of like in the way that, like, I don't have to reiterate why I would feel uncomfortable in that space, with like all the kind of backlash against trans women in sports. But so yeah, my experience with the IATBP was awesome. They put the bodybuilders before the powerlifters. I want to point that out.
That was a historical issue because we were a bodybuilding organization first, even though we have our powerlifting meets before the bodybuilding show. Like,
I'm just teasing, but yeah. So my experience was amazing. Like, it was everything that I wanted, and it was everything that I was afraid that an experience in another federation wouldn't be. Right? Like everyone there, like Zeus, Sabrina, Squee, and Tilda, they were all like so awesome and supportive, and everyone was cheering each other on, and like we were like Zeus and their crew were the only, like, they were the ones that brought the chalk, so like everyone was like dipping into their chalk. It was like it was terrific. Like it was perfect because it made such an individual sport, but like there was like actual like sportsmanship, there, when I think that gets lost sometimes, at least in like the social media powerlifting sphere. Like people have their competitions and then they're like immediately like on Instagram like calling out the judges for like giving them a red light, and it's just like, and it's like, it's not even like it's like some of the best lifters in the world are still like trash talking judges in their competition on Instagram, and it's like that's not there in the IATBP. So it's like this great model for what sport could and should be, and why people should listen to queer people and like just like make competition better. Like, because sport is like always been social, it's always been political, and it's always been like, so like why are we pretending that it's like this biological formality? Like it's not like some kind of like test, you know what I mean? It's like, sport is what we make it, so like why don't we just make it cool? Like
yeah, and I totally agree, right? So that reminds me of how I think sportsmanship itself, right, is just about, uplifting one another.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about, I mean, it's of course about winning too, right? To be honest, we all want to win, as an athlete, right? But at the same time, I think, being able to, uplift each other, and then just to, enjoy and have fun with one another and to help each other. I think, that's a very important element, right? Of like playing sports and be an athlete yourself, right? Or, and especially I feel like, because I mean, I've never been to a powerlifting meet in person before, but I have a lot of powerlifting friends that actually give me this idea that, unlike bodybuilding competitions where, I mean, mainstream competitions where people are much more on their own, right? Because I feel like the whole journey of like, the dieting and the lifestyle itself as a bodybuilder is pretty selfish, right? Pretty self-orientated, pretty selfish. And so in terms of like competition wise, a lot of times in mainstream competitions, you don't see people helping each other a lot. And everyone is like trying to do their own thing. And everyone tries to hide the physique until the moment they step on stage, right? And everyone else is like so enclosed to their own world. But I have heard from so many powerlifting friends that, you know, they have such a, you know, just a blissful, happy moments, you know, with each other. And everyone is going to cheer for each other. It's not really about, I lift more weight than you do, right? Or you lift better than I do, right? So I feel like, you know, that kind of environment is, you know, particularly nourished, right? In competitions like, you know, IATBP that provides such a safe space where you can just be yourself, right? And do the lifting. And that's it, right? And have fun and enjoy it. And so, and I think that is so important, you know, to let the sport itself grow. Right. So I feel like a lot of people often think that, well, if we have to grow, you know, competitions or sports, we have to go to the mainstream competitions. But I don't always agree with that. And I feel like, you know, competitions like IATBPs, right, actually provide that space, right? Or even examples, right? Or model that mainstream competitions could actually, you know, learn from us.
Yeah, I mean, especially in something like even bodybuilding, you have the IFBB, you have the OCB of NPC, which would be like the big three, and then you have like a whole milieu of natural federations. Like, there's a lot of organizations out there, like, you know what I mean? So it's like powerlifting's the same way. It's just like an alphabet soup of federations with their own like little tweaks to the rules, and it was all because of like politics at some point, and some guy didn't like another guy, and so they just made another federation, you know. And so it's like, yeah, there's no problem with having another federation, you know. And so, like, I think that yeah, I would be interested to know like people, yeah, people. I don't know what drives people to like really kind of like hone in on that kind of competitive mindset. But it's nice to kind of like take a step back and really just compete against, because like ultimately in powerlifting you're competing against yourself. Like your body is not going to be like the person's body next to you. Like your femurs, your body will be like half an inch longer at the same height. Like your leverages are different. Like your leverages are different. Your genetics are different. Like your life story is different. Like it's never fair, you know. Like what even would be fairness, you know? And same with like bodybuilding. Like, it's so subjective. Like, what is fairness? Like, everyone's just trying to put together their best lifts, like in an environment, in a structured environment, you know? And I think that's like, it was an amazing experience. And I think everyone should, like, if you are like, oh, well, I don't know if I should compete, I think you just need to do it. Like, I think you should just do it. Like, you need to be able to bench press 50 pounds, squat 50 pounds, and deadlift 135. And that's all you have to do. Like, that's the minimum entry point. And the rest, like, you could ask somebody when you get there.
So I'm curious to know now. So as you said, are you planning to, you know, come back and compete at IATBP this year, or do you have other plans in competing in the upcoming future?
Yeah. So I'm kind of I am still kind of like dealing with so I was getting over some like gut dysbiosis that I just never really addressed from like my eating disorder. So I went to like an inpatient treatment facility I guess like 2 years ago now. So like I was like in recovery when I competed, but I was still dealing with some like lingering health issues. So I kind of like haven't touched the barbell really since the meet. I've been doing like a lot of single leg work, a lot of like bodybuilding stuff. And unfortunately, this year's meet doesn't really fit my schedule with it being so close to Thanksgiving. So I will be absent this year, but I do want to make a return in the future. But I haven't decided if I'm going to kind of like make a push for bodybuilding or powerlifting in a couple of years. So, but
wow, a crossover athlete, that would be cool.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm like I feel like a 2-year-old. Like I tell everyone like being like transitioning, like you feel brand new, you know? And so like I'm just like I want to do everything all at once. Like I did like roller derby for a couple months. I did some like pole dancing for a couple months. Like I am like all over the place. So yeah, but like bodybuilding and powerlifting, I think there's a lot of like synergy, you know? And like bodybuilding, it's kind of like in the season of like having to tackle like some of the digestion issues I was having, like bodybuilding just made more sense because it's like bodybuilding is concerned with the minutiae, right? Like powerlifting, like I could eat like I was just eating like a pound of ground beef a day and rice and a lot of vegetables, and you know what I mean? And it's fine, like but like and I lost 40 pounds in the lead up to the meet too, just like just eating clean and focusing on my training. But like there was still like some diet, like yeah. So I'm focusing on my health is the short of it, and I will be back, but not this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, I also agree that like powerlifting and bodybuilding is just very close to one another in terms of like the nature of sports. Even we did talk about, you know, the mental, right? The mental challenge is slightly different, right? But ultimately, I think, and of course, like powerlifting, you have to make weight too in some ways, but less intensive than bodybuilding, right? But you know, there's a different. It's a very similar and overlapping sport, while it's also different. And so like we look forward to your comeback. Maybe you can compete both.
Can you imagine being at the end of prep and I guess you wouldn't know, but
No, I could not imagine
you
the level of hunger.
How you feel in prep, and so then you would know that you like probably are not having your best lifts in the gym. So imagine that times 10. Like imagine like asking your body to do something that it doesn't want to do on a good day. You know?
Dude, imagine being 6% body fat and trying to like deadlift 600 pounds or so. Like, I don't even know. I couldn't even. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now we have to.
I'm 5'2".
Like,
I could not.
Maybe like, yeah, no. I mean, maybe like if I'm like on like so much gear that like, like I'm just like, if I'm just like on a ton of trend and I come in looking like a sweaty mess, maybe I can like deadlift. All right. But.
Yeah, or maybe one day if like maybe our competition could be separated into different periods of time, and maybe that could do.
Yeah, I think that's like that would be like amazing. I always like because I always admire like athletes like Hunter Henderson, who's like a powerlifter and bodybuilder.
Oh yes.
Who like does it all, you know, just absolutely like freak athlete, you know. But like I think that you can do that, right? Because like you need the mass to, you know, because I was kind of like at like last October I was like basically like capped out on my muscle mass. Like I need to put some more meat on me to begin with, so this kind of like this bodybuilding hiatus is needed.
Yeah, I mean, at the best time for doing powerlifting like shows, right? For instance, is during the off season, at the peak of the off season in bodybuilding, where you are, you know, most, with most strength, and also you have the most muscles and fat, right? That can accompany with the, you know, with the weights. Right. So I think, yeah, maybe definitely that would be something that we might have to consider in the future, because I feel like there's a lot of overlapping, right, in both sports. And it's best if everyone can join both sports, right, without compromising, you know, their health, and also compromising, you know, their loss of strength, because they focus on either sport, right? So yeah, I think one final question that we actually have for you is that in terms of, so we talked a little bit about, you know, very briefly about all these political thing that's going on, right, in regards with all the anti-trans legislation, like, you know, banning trans women, trans girls from competing in sports, or all the different ridiculous type of legislation that's going on. So what are you hoping for the future of powerlifting or sports in general in terms of like trans inclusion?
I think it really needs to be about like a reimagining of what sport is in this country. Like I think we need to like recalibrate. Like it's not this like proxy for like anything else, right? Like why can't it just be about physical activity? Why can't it just be about the social? I mean, I think this, like, you can draw a straight line between like trans inclusion in sports and things like Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and like how much of a backlash there was to that. Like, people want to project things onto sports like that aren't there. Like, there's expectations of athletes and power dynamics in sport that like shouldn't be there. Like, athletes should be able to determine like what they do, like what sportsmanlike conduct is. It shouldn't be like talking heads on the television network. It shouldn't be like Instagram comments. Like, there are spaces for trans women to compete, and they are not overrepresented in the sports that they compete in, like roller derby, for example. But like, no one is like, it's just mind blowing. Like, people start with a conclusion and then kind of like craft their policies to meet their conclusion. And so I think sports should spring from the participants first, and kind of like that be the final word, you know? And I mean, like, even like 20 years ago, there was a woman in my high school who wrestled on the men's wrestling team. Like, it was fine. Like, nobody got hurt. Like why? Like, who cares? Like, these are like sports, especially like youth sports, are like so formative in like creating like social relationships. We know that this is like the most fertile time of like growth and development in the human experience. Like, why are we depriving people of these issues, these experiences, and this developmental, just there's such as this, it's so important. And I struggle to talk about it because it's so baffling to me, you know what I mean? Because when you drill down, it's all rooted in misogyny, that like women need to be protected from like trans men or trans women, I'm sorry, or like trans, like, because you don't see the same backlash with like trans men competing in male sports. And so it's like, I don't know, I hope that people just, you know, keep their eye on the ball and like realize that like this isn't an issue, and it's just to distract you from other stuff that like actually affects women's lives and everyone's lives. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just hope for like more a reimagining of what sport is, and then just let it be like productive, right? Like, don't make it this like paramilitary capitalist training system. Like, just let it be sport. Like, let it be like competition, like healthy social competition. Like, teach sportsmanship, teach like all the great values that sport can teach.
Yeah, I do totally agree. I mean, nowadays we see people using the word fairness, right? And I have so much trouble of how people, you know, manipulate this word fairness into their own advantages, right? So I think to answer one of the question, it's not your question, but maybe my question, right, in mind, is that why is there a lot of like misogyny going on like around sports, right? And especially in the name of protecting women or women athletes, right? I think that has much to do with how the sports is operating like an industry, right? So like, you know, and then women often get so-called, you know, an unfair, you know, share within the sports industry itself, where they get less sponsorship, they get less money, prize money in general, right? And so there is this, and so they uphold this idea, especially women, cis women athletes themselves, right? Uphold this idea that, you know, we need to be fair. We don't want other intruders, right, to come in and say, take away our only sponsorship that we can. But I think the root of the problem is that, you know, it's the systemic problem, right? It's a systemic problem that why we create that kind of inequality you know, in the first stance, right? And so we should, I think, you know, a way to reframe the idea of sports and competition categories is really to think through that system, the systemic oppression that's going on, right? Instead of just blaming, you know, now we become the scapegoats, right? Trans people become the scapegoats of a broken sports structure, right? So I think, definitely we need to rethink and reframe, how we approach sports and how we approach competition itself. Okay.
100%.
I don't know.
100%.
Yeah, right.
Way louder.
I hope this is hopefully this is not a very negative ending. But
No, I mean,
just
I think that organizations like the one we're talking about, like, are a model for everything that it can be, and I think it's like, yeah, like let's just do it, guys. Come on.
And we should do more like this, right? We should have more competition and federations. It shouldn't be just IATBP, right? It should be more federations that adopt, and provide, really just spaces for people to compete and have fun, right? And, compete in a competitive way, but also have fun at the same time. So I think that's very important. And for those, do you have like a last word, right? Before we open up for any potential Q&A questions, do you have any advice for those who might be thinking about competing? Oh, by the way, IATBP, we are going to be organized this year on November 18th. So bodybuilding and powerlifting will be on the same day. So, if you're interested, in competing upcoming November, I hope you can give some advice to those who might be, considering competing, after hearing what we talk about today.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it. Like I said, so you need to be able to lift the bars and the collars, which is like about 50 pounds, the bench press, or the squat. Deadlift, I think, would be 135. And all you need is a singlet and a pair of shoes. A singlet, you can get them, like you might have some from your, previous wrestling career. Maybe you're like a competitive gymnast or something. Use it. But they're also available on like Amazon, like $20. Sign up, show up, and the people there will help you out. I will not be there, but if you have any questions about like how you should train or like what my experience is like, feel free to DM me. Happy to answer anything. No conflicts of interest. I can give you all the secrets and the tea. But so yeah, there's no reason not to, honestly. Like if anything that like we talked about, if you
yeah.
Jeez.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. I've never had this many technical difficulties.
Well,
I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Like we all understand it. Yeah, but thank you so much for for coming up here today to share with your powerlifting journey with us. A lot of very insightful information, not only about powerlifting but also your own journey and how you deal with the sport itself, and also navigate your own gender identity. I think I'm sure it would reach out to a lot of people, and hopefully, people will be inspired, and, get into whatever sports they want to do. Yes. Nat, do we have any questions from audience or?
I didn't see any. I was letting people know that they could ask questions, but yeah, but I mean, the only question that we had was from yesterday, which you already asked, which is kind of like advice for people who are looking to compete and are kind of on the fence about it. I had somebody be like, yeah, if this is her first competition, like what would it be like competing for the first time, and what did you wish you knew before you competed? So you guys kind of already touched on that a little bit, but if you have anything else that you want to say in that regard.
On that second part, I think that it's going to be harder than you think it is afterwards. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for when you go into a powerlifting meet, you're going to push harder than you ever had in your life. That's just the nature of competition, but my body woke up at the middle of the night and it was we need to get the heck out of here. Something's wrong. Something is seriously wrong. And so I got 3 hours of sleep the night after the meet. So that would be the one thing that I would be not prepared for, to prepare for is like, don't go have a celebratory beer afterwards. Like, take care of yourself. Like, maybe do some yoga. Like, eat a salad. Like, don't go eat a burger and beer and think everything's gonna be fine because you just worked really hard. And I think the same could be true for like a bodybuilding show too. Like, you probably don't want to go out and like, have a couple beers, right? Like, just take care of yourself. Like, you did something amazing, and so now you need to like, reward your body by treating it a little bit nicer.
Definitely. Yeah, that was the only I'm like monitoring the chat here, but yeah, that's the only question we had. But I agree as well. I mean, I've never competed. Thank God I've never gone through that level of hell. But that's what I hear from a lot of bodybuilders, at least, as well. It's just like when you're that exhausted and tired and hungry, going out for some drinks is not going to make you feel better. So,
Well, bodybuilders would not say so, I guess.
oh,
we
that's
have
what I've heard. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Like, people have been dieting for so long. And so it's kind of, but I would also, usually I would advise people who just finished a bodybuilding competition not to eat so aggressively. You can eat whatever you want, but try not to be eating too aggressively. Like people just, put in like 3 days of, food in one meal because they have been so hungry for so long. But then it ends up, giving the body a hard time to digest, after all the preparation that you have done on your body. So I think, definitely this is advice, but it also takes a lot of discipline. So, but I think, once you get used to it, then you will be fine. You have many days that you can eat whatever you want, right? After the competition, but rest is important, letting your body rest. I also see people right after competition, they just go back to the gym immediately and then train as hard as they did before the competition, which I also do not advise on because, you on a powerlifting meet, you lift probably the heaviest weights that you have ever done, right, in your life, and you need rest. So, take that time to rest, to take care of your body, to enjoy time with your family and friends and partners, right, before hitting back to the gym. So I think that would be a really wise and good advice on that.
Yeah, that part about training is really, really important too. Like, I just don't even go walk in the gym for the next week. Like, do some like yin yoga if you want to, but like don't do it. And then like, even then, like you might think about like not touching the barbell for like a couple weeks more, just because like you're gonna, just ease into it. Do some single leg work, like working those imbalances, mobility, things like that, before stepping it up again. Because like if you give that time to like let yourself recover, then you're gonna get hungry for it again, and then you're just gonna hit it that much harder when it comes back.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. We did have somebody else in the comment just like say that they would love a category just for bikini, and we actually do have that if you're gonna compete in our bodybuilding competition. When you register for the competition and you select like the femme division, we have an option to compete in bodybuilding or bikini. So that does exist if you're interested in that. But yeah, that's pretty much all we've got.
We just need more women to sign up.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's one of the issues that we have is we created the space for both femme bodybuilding and bikini, and we just so far have never had more than 2 competitors at a time. But if more people sign up, then we have more of an excuse to make even more space for that. Like we already created the space, and we want to fill it, with lots of femme and female trans athletes. So I totally agree.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, as we mentioned earlier, right, bodybuilding and powerlifting are very overlapping in a lot of ways. So if any, lifters that is right here listening to our podcast and Fireside Chat, podcast, maybe a version of it, definitely you should, you can also come try bodybuilding sometime. And of course, like in powerlifting too. So once again, we just reiterate, the date of this year's competition, which will be on November 18th.
Yeah.
And so we're always based in Atlanta. So and hopefully we will see you here this year. And everyone else who plans to compete or just plan to support our trans athletes you know, being mostly the first time competing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sell it to your like friends and loved ones. There's a great aquarium. There is amazing volunteers. What else is there?
LA
Sports.
is just a fun little quirky city. I really like a lot of what it has there.
Yeah, Atlanta's
So,
super cool.
yeah.
Worth the trip. With the family.
Yeah. Yeah, totally worth the trip, even if you're just going to watch the show. I mean, a lot of people who go to our bodybuilding show, and we want to have an audience for the powerlifting meet this year, hopefully. They say that it's just a really incredible experience just to watch it and to see the athletes up there and like cheering everybody on. So even if you just want to come check out a show, if you're like on the fence about competing, or if you want to see something really cool that you've never seen before, a trans-only bodybuilding and powerlifting competition is truly like a beautiful and amazing experience to get to be a part of, even if you're not actually competing. So definitely worth it to come out, I think.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow your Instagram. What is your Instagram account so that everyone knows again?
So my lifting Instagram is Iggy Squat, IGGYSQUAT, and then my main Instagram is Isla Gordon, and from that Isla Gordon account you can get to my art, my partner's Instagram, our collaborations Instagram. So yeah, follow me. Feel free to follow me on any of those. Ask me any questions about lifting. Happy to answer.
Yes, definitely. And if you follow our account, that's the best way to keep up with anything in regards to the competition itself. So if you're ever wondering any updates, how to sign up, all of that event information, it's all going to be on our Instagram. And if you want to sign up to compete, you can become a member on our website first. And then from there, you log into your account as a member, and you can actually register to compete. And there's a post pinned right to the top of our feed that you can look at that shows you exactly how to sign up, how to register to compete. So it's not confusing at all. It's step by step. So yeah, I think that's everything that we've got on our part. Thank you so much, Kyla, for your time.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And just a last word is that on May 20th, it will be our next Fireside Chat. This time we will be inviting, again, a powerlifting friend. So who is a trans man who had competed in the USAPL before his transition. So I think that would be, you know, a good, you know, conversation today with you, and next month with another powerlifting friend from the trans masculine side. So don't forget to subscribe us, like follow us, so that you will know the latest news. And thank you so much for being here today. Thank you everyone for being here today, and looking forward to see you in our next Fireside Chat.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.